Welcome, everyone. And my name is Julia Beatty, and I'm the chair of the Shuswap Climate Action Society. We're really excited to be presenting the first of this rewilding webinar series that we're calling Lose the Lawn, Rewilding Your Yard. Before we get started, I want to first acknowledge that we are grateful to be on the unceded and unsurrendered traditional territory of the Secwepemc Nation. If you want to add something in the comments about your land acknowledgement, please do so. Next, I'd like to thank the City of Salmon Arm for their generous donation to the Shuswap Climate Action Society toward this initiative, which has actually made it possible for us to offer the presentations free to the public. We really are happy that they were interested enough to really support our initiative, and they're on board. So that was really good news. Our speaker tonight is Keli Westgate. Keli is a certified permaculture designer and owner of Lekker Land Design, a Vernon-based social enterprise that focuses on climate-friendly ecosystems and projects. Keli's passion is helping communities, homeowners, and organizations increase organic food security, build soil and resilience, protect water, and gain valuable and important connections to the natural world. She's a garden coach, permaculture consultant, time and money saver, health promoter, and knowledge sharer. Her diverse background means the advice she shares goes well beyond the landscape. I'm pleased to turn it over to our speaker, Keli Westgate.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you for your land acknowledgement. I would like to also acknowledge that for me here today, I'm very grateful to be coming to you from the beautiful unceded territory of the Silks people. So I'm in Coldstream, and they have been stewarding this land since time immemorial. A lot of what I do is very much influenced by Indigenous people. So you'll see a bunch of that tonight. So yes, I'm with Lekker Land Design. My company started a couple years ago, just right before the heat dome that we all remember so well. So very interesting timing. Lekker, for those of you that might have either Dutch or German or South African background, probably recognize the word. It actually means delicious. And I named the company that because I do a lot of edible landscaping and consultation. So let's see if my slides will move. There we go. That's me. So I got certified in permaculture in 2014 here in Vernon. I have spent a lot of time with Spa Hills Compost. Some of you may remember me as the compost lady for a number of years with them at the IPE and different events. And if you own a restaurant or any business that makes food waste, you've probably chatted with me in the last 6 or 7 years. I do private consultations. I do project management and education, all sort of under the umbrella of permaculture, which I'll get into a little bit deeper shortly. I've been on a number of nonprofit boards. A couple of the ones that are relevant here would be SENS in Vernon, the Sustainable Environment Network Society, and also the Historic O'Keefe Ranch Society. I ran twice for the provincial government with a focus on looking at everything through a climate lens, as I feel it should be now. If we don't have breathable air or, drinkable water or growable soil, then what have we got? And education-wise, I took liberal studies at UBC in Vancouver. So that was a very broad range of topics, from philosophy to psychology to the environment to, religion and mythology. So really, I'm a lifelong learner and recently completed the Climate Adaptation Fundamentals course at Royal Roads University. So my why of starting this company, well, initially it started with some climate anxiety, I'll be honest. Just if you've been paying attention to things, you may have felt it yourself. And permaculture really offered a tool belt of solutions that I could pull from that really felt empowering to me, so that I didn't feel, you know, like a victim of it all, that there was actually things that I could do on a day-to-day basis that would calm the anxiety, but also start to work towards a better world. So in the blue dot there, these are the three sort of ethics of permaculture: care for the earth, care for people, and fair share. So at the end of the day, this is where I'm coming from. It's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of wanting to, you know, think about my son and the next generation, and the planet that we're leaving them, and wanting to be, you know, a hopefully an inspiration and a motivator for people to dig in and start doing the work that's necessary. Okay. So everybody loves a good before and after. So I'll just start by showing you what my property looked like when I moved in 10 years ago. So obviously the biodiversity was pretty slim. You know, we don't really plant cedars up against houses anymore for good reason. As you can see, the grass was very dead. There was a lot of landscape fabric that got ripped up. I'm surrounded by trees, which is quite lovely, but a lot of them are invasive trees, like Siberian elm that I fight with all the time. Some of you may have had this experience. So this picture was taken in 2013. And since then, it's gone through a lot of changes. And this is, oops. This is what it looked like a couple years later. So obviously the cedars got removed. I've put in raised beds for vegetables. I've got, you know, annuals, perennials, a little bit of everything. In the very, very back there, you can see a little tiny house. And, but even since then, you know, it's changed. So this is closer to this fall. So it's getting to the point of not a lot left to do. I think I need to move so I can work on another garden. So that's the south facing garden. You can see there I've got grapes growing on a trellis. Down in the front I've got some catmint, which is great for pollinators. And there's a white currant in there, and a number of other things. This was my front yard when I moved in. They wanted cedars on all sides of the house for some reason. And this is this fall. So lots has changed, and this has taken quite a while, you know, over time to develop. Some things have been just left to grow. I didn't plant the sumac trees, for example, but I absolutely love them, and I'm grateful that they decided to grow there. So I end up just cutting those back all the time. They're very good growers. And I've got some fall aster blooming there. And in the center this year, I had peppers, and I've got to thin out those irises. And then this was the east side of the house, quite a lot of grass. And it's been through multiple iterations since then. So this is closer to now, with a raised bed. I've got, again, some raspberries. These peppers are dying there in the foreground. Trees are getting mature, and my compost area is in the back there. I'll talk more about compost in a little while. I've got a mulched pathway, so that helped get rid of some of the grass. So now really it's all that's left is a little area that I can stretch out and you know, have a sun chair on. So that was just sort of the before and after to get you interested. Oh, there's my husband on the before on the back, and there's my current. It's a very productive area, so I don't like to leave a lot of corners without things going on. So you can see there I've got my rainwater catchment. I'll speak about that a little bit later as well. A greenhouse for extending the season. So this is really in response to climate change, and you know, just needing to have a little bit more of a controlled environment at you know, on the shoulders of the seasons to keep those plants growing and the food coming. Oh, and then finally, there you go. So as you can see, right into my shed. It's a mishmash of flowers and vegetables and herbs, and lots of different colors and leaf shapes and bloom times. So we'll get into that a little bit deeper. So as I said, permaculture does come with ethics and principles. So the 3 ethics I said earlier: care for earth, care for people, return the surplus. There's also 12 permaculture principles. And I do teach a class on an introduction to permaculture. If anybody's interested in that, we'll find a date to do a next class. And I get a lot deeper into all of these things tonight. I'm going to whip through them fairly quickly just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So there's 12 principles within permaculture. The first is observe and interact. So when you're thinking about swapping out your lawn for something new, what I really advise clients is to just sit back and really look at what's there now. And, grab a pen and paper, or however you like to take notes, and just sit and watch. Are there any insects? Are there any butterflies? Is there any slimy molds? Are there any wildlife? Do you see weeds? What is it? Really take stock of what it is that you've got on site currently, so that you can look back, like my before and after pictures, and start to really see the dramatic change that hopefully a bunch of you are about to go through. So if you're not seeing much, that's really telling too. Well, no, I don't have any butterflies. I don't have any bees. Well, you've got to invite them in. So observe and interact, take notes. Second principle is catch and store energy. I just used this photo as an excuse to show off my cat. This is a 1,000-liter rain barrel. So I'm collecting this and 2 other rain barrels on my property. And it's something that I really feel like is going to be much bigger in the Okanagan in the coming years as the climate changes, and we've got more sort of, hard, fast rain events are predicted to happen. So when those happen, we want to slow down the energy of the water, catch it, and then let it trickle out over time and use that as your water. And gardens prefer rainwater anyway. They don't really love chlorinated water, so something to consider as well. The plants, if anybody's wondering, that pink flower there, that beautiful pink flower is a sedum, blooms in the fall, so really nice fall flower. Obtain a yield. So if you're going to have land, you're going to have a garden, you're going to have a yard, why not get something out of it? And so that yield could be annual vegetables, it could be perennial flowers, it could be perennial berries. Why just water and mow and water and mow? It seems futile. You're never going to win that battle. So obtain a yield, get something back. Applying self-regulation and feedback. So the reason I've shown these 3 photos, one of them, obviously, I've got a pest issue on the left. I've got something eating my plant. Now, permaculture takes a little bit of a different outlook on, pests. Sometimes we have sacrificial plants in the garden. So we may plant certain things to attract pests away from another plant, or this might just be an infestation and there's something wrong with it. But we just, again, we look at it and go, okay, so let's look around. What's happening in the rest of the garden? What is this insect? What is it doing? What are those little yellow things? Yeah, so use it as a learning opportunity instead of a, oh my goodness, what's happening in my garden? Something's eating it. If something's eating it in a permaculture garden, that's good. You've got things tasty in the garden. So we're going to have to give some back. That's the share the surplus ethic. We're not going to get 100% of the harvest from our own space. We have to realize that, Mother Nature and all the creatures are also just trying to survive this wild ride that we're on. So there's a little bit of give and take there. The second photo in the middle, while it looks quite pretty, the plant on the right there is actually invasive Japanese knotweed. So that has since been removed from that site, and it's a very difficult plant to get rid of. There's special requirements for getting rid of it. So again, back to the know your landscape and know what's going on, be able to identify things. On the far right, that was an early greenhouse purchase, and learned very early that it's quite windy in my backyard, and it blew this greenhouse over. So you know, that one of the things that I offer clients is that I've made a lot of mistakes myself. So you get to learn from my mistakes and not have to waste money on cheap greenhouses that are just going to last a year or two. Having said that, good learning experience to start with something a little bit lower down on the scale so that you get used to, for example, how quickly the temperature can rise in a greenhouse, and how strong the wind is. It gives you a really good barometer for that. Next, produce no waste. Obviously, this one is very close to my heart. So although in Salmon Arm you do have a composting pickup service, I do encourage you to keep some of that organic material on site. You will always need compost for your plants. You're always going to want to be giving nutrition back to those plants. You know, stop giving those leaves away. Keep your leaves, use them as mulch. Best if you grind them up small, you know, shred them with a leaf blower on the suck function, or you can use a push mower. But it's best if they're chopped up a little bit smaller to increase the surface area, and so that you don't get a mat of leaves when you mulch this way. Because if you get your mat, then actually the water can't get through it all the way. Lots of different ways that you can compost. Always make sure that you've got a good carbon nitrogen ratio. So every time you put food waste in, make sure you cover it with a carbon material. So we call it browns, shredded newspaper, organic straw, dead leaves, anything that's a woody type material. Use renewable resources and services. So there's a couple different things going on here. On the left, you see some sheet mulching with cardboard. So this is a way that we sort of muffle out land, or grass rather, so that we can start a new garden area. So it's a really quick and efficient way to do it. It's carbon. It's, you know, former trees was the cardboard. And so you can actually just, you know, layer those over, make sure that you have more, you know, it overlaps on each layer of cardboard. And then this is actually a good thing to do in the fall. And then you can cover that with a mulch over the winter, and it'll start to prepare a bed for you for next year. It's also a really good way just to start to lay out what you want to do in your yard, so you can see it visually, like, okay, here's a pile of cardboard in a circle over here. Do I like that? Do I have enough room for my pathways? You know, but on there, you can also see that it's edged with brick. So not necessarily a renewable resource. Whereas on the right, this garden has rock. So it's just natural river rock, and then just logs I've used as edges for those garden beds. So a little bit different from, you know, a more permanent concrete or, you know, brick structure. And it's more understanding that we are constantly in a state of change. There's no done in gardening. You're always going to be changing something. You're always going to be pulling something out or putting something in. So whether that makes you feel better or worse, I'm not sure. For me, it lets me know that, okay, there's always going to be something to do. And that's reassuring, because it's great to be out there. Design from pattern to detail. So I wanted to show you a very rough hand sketch, because this might be where you start. You know, start where you are with what you've got, measure out your property. It's best to measure it out, and then start just placing things where you might want it, starting with the biggest items. So if you want to plant a tree, then figure out where that tree is going to go. Think about the mature size of the tree. Don't think, well, it's just a tiny little tree, so I'll tuck it up against the fence. That's going to be a 50-foot tree. You know, it's going to hang over your neighbor's yard. So really think about that placement. And so it's really useful to have that with the measurements on a piece of paper, so you can go, okay, well, if one block on the graph paper is a foot, okay, well, or 2 feet or whatever you're using, then you know, okay, well, I need about at least, you know, somewhere between 2 and 4 feet, depending on how, you know, wild I want to get with my pathways. But if you want to be using a wheelbarrow or anything like that, you'll need about 4 feet to move around. Once you've got your trees, figure out your bushes and your smaller things, and then your flowers, and then your ground cover. And so you're going from big to small. So that's pattern to detail. integrate rather than separate or segregate. So we've been trained for 100 years to have neat little rows and everything's tidy and it's separate and the carrots are over there and the tomatoes are over there. And permaculture invites you to bring it all together because there's a lot of plants that do a lot better if they've got a companion to grow with. So if you're keeping notes along the way, you can write down companion planting. Some of the most well-known ones would be the Three Sisters. So that would be corn, beans, and squash. Corn grows nice and tall. Beans twine up the corn, and then the squash has a nice big leaf, which shades the soil and keeps it nice and cool. Here, this herb spiral here, it's got, looks like lavender and parsley and chamomile and thyme. And so the herb spiral is sort of a permaculture, it's a quintessential permaculture thing because it's a really good use of space. It's a really nice shape. It gets higher in the middle. So you keep all of your heat-loving plants on the south side of the herb spiral, and then all of your shadier, cooler-loving plants on the north side. You can use brick, you can use stone, you can use flat sort of pavers, you can use wood. If you chop up wood, you can do a circle of those. I don't mind using things that will break down in a number of years because that's all part of the system and it's all giving back. So do consider that. Use small, slow solutions. So this home here had a bunch of debris to use and wanted to create a little bit of privacy on the corner and was just sort of starting to get rid of some of that lawn area. And so started with just one bed. And that's a great way to do it too. Just to kind of, if you're new to this and you're getting comfortable with it, then do one thing really well. Don't take on your entire garden and get overwhelmed by it. Pick an area and do it really well and really make it intentional. So in this one, she wanted, I'm going to grow as much food as I can in this one bed. She did a hugelkultur method. I will get into that in a little bit. But you don't have to do it all at once. And I think a lot of people do stress themselves out thinking that it's all got to be done right now, because there is a certain level of urgency, definitely, to the climate situation. So I feel that, but like I said, it's better to do one area really well than to do the entire area not so great. Use and value diversity. So once again, more is better. So in this bed here, you've got echinacea, you've got sunflowers, you've got gaillardia, there's some cabbage, there's amaranth down there, some calendula. So we want to have all that diversity because each of the pollinators that we're trying to invite into the space like different things. They like different colors, they like different shapes, and they come at different times. So in this bed, they all just happen to be blooming at the same time, which is of course lovely, but you want to make sure that you've got something consistently blooming, for as long in the season as possible. That'll really start to build your ecosystem. Use the edges and value the marginal. When I see these perfectly tidy landscapes with cut edges, I just think, no, that's not what nature does. Nature kind of collects the water at the edges, and that's where things start to grow really well. So you can see in this photo, the grass on the bottom of the picture, right behind that is the rock edge, and the water just holds there. I think I mowed twice this entire season. I don't water my grass, but I also don't mow it. And I'm okay with letting it get a little bit longer. If any of you have heard of the no mow May movement, to not mow your grass in May, for a while you might feel triggered by the dandelions, but they do go away and they are serving a purpose. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So don't cut your edges. Creatively use and respond to change. So this was taken in 2021, shortly after I started the business. This is at a client's property, and she tried to plant a ginkgo tree, and they're lovely trees, but it just didn't make it. And, there comes a time where we have to accept that certain plants are going to die. We're going to kill a few plants, and that's okay. Death is part of life, especially when it comes to the garden. Within that death, comes new life, right? So if a tree falls over in the forest, that log becomes a whole ecosystem for a whole host of other creatures. So it's not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of a whole new life for many creatures. So why not lawns? If most of you are here, you probably already know the answer to this question. So I won't spend a lot of time on it. But, you know, the first question is, why do we even like lawns? Like, where did they come from? And they really were big in the 1800s. And it was the wealthy Europeans who you know, had lots of space. And this was sort of a luxury. And it kind of got brought over here without really asking those questions. And of course, we all want to appear, you know, like we're doing okay. And it was really like, if you can afford a lawn, if you can afford to not have a garden in your front yard, wow, you must be doing really well. But then to flip that on its head in the Second World War, of course, we needed all the land being used for food. And all of a sudden there was this big campaign to put in these victory gardens, you know, feed the soldiers, put in your effort for the war. So it's, you know, depending on what the political situation it really has an effect on what we do with our yards and what our aesthetic is for that time. And now, you know, we've had a drought year. We've had a lot of fires. Our soils are really depleted. So we have to do something differently now. And lawns, let's face it, they need a lot of maintenance. Why are you working so hard? This is why most landscape companies don't mind lawns, of course, because they can come and they can spray them with pesticides, and they can come and mow them every 2 weeks and, you know, get the irrigation going, and there's lots of maintenance. But unless you are, you know, playing bocce ball every day or doing some lawn-based activity, there's probably a lot of unused space that could be going to something that'll benefit you, bring you more joy, you know, allow you to take a bouquet of flowers to a friend's place or something like that. Lawns are also unnatural. Not that grasses are unnatural, but monocropped single species grass, that type of thing doesn't happen in nature, right? In nature, everything's growing on top of each other, beside each other, you know, twining in with each other. So we will always lose this battle. There will always be something else trying to creep into your lawn. So why not just lean into it and try something new? And as the climate warms, of course, lawns are going to get harder to maintain. They do need so much water. You won't need a gas mower making noise and stink anymore if once you start to get rid of that lawn. And the water. I mean, really, at the end of the day, water is life. We all need water to live. If you haven't been paying attention to the local water situation, I really encourage you to dig in and see sort of, you know, where are the headwaters? Where is our water coming from? How is it treated? What happened in 2023? Well, in Vernon, close to me, we had 17% of the usual rainfall this year. We're already very dry. We're an incredibly arid landscape. So 17% of the rainwater is a little scary. And in Salmon Arm, as you know, you had watering restrictions. And so you just have to sort of sit and watch everything die in front of you. And it's really hard. It's sort of, you know, emotional to watch. But landscapes do rebound if they're given the right tools. And this, you know, quote from the Scientific American: the sheer volume of resources required to keep lawns alive is staggering. And of course, you get no food, right? As we saw in 2021, atmospheric river, floods, landslides, leading to closed roads, leading to empty grocery store shelves, leading to higher prices. So it all sort of cascades. And all of a sudden you realize, you know, the reason that we have 72-hour emergency kits is because if, for example, roads get closed and grocery store shelves go empty, what are we doing? You know, we were cut off, albeit for a very brief time in 2021. But boy, did that open everybody's eyes. When we grow some food at home too, we reduce some greenhouse gases, which is obviously, you know, a big job that we have to tackle now. You're not going to be having to truck that food back and forth. If you go with an edible landscape, of course, you get tasty food. If you've ever tasted the difference between a store-bought, watery strawberry and a just plucked from the garden strawberry, you will know that there is just no comparison. And we've sort of prioritized size of berries over taste and flavor. And really, we need to get back to what grows locally, what is natural here. Perennial herbs that you can go out when you're making dinner and just snip a couple of herbs for the meal. It's just, it's a really nice lifestyle too. So this is the grass area in my garden. And as you can see, it's definitely not a monocrop. And a lot of people would, currently look at some of this and think, well, you've got a lot of weeds there. So what makes a weed? What is a weed? A weed is just an unwanted plant. In this case, the plant there with the sort of rounded leaves on the bottom left of the left shot, that's plantain. That's actually edible. So if you didn't know any better, you'd go, oh, I'll rip that up. That's gross. I don't like it. It's ugly. But it's kind of like a spinach. You can actually eat it, throw it in a salad, chop it up, put it in a smoothie. So nature's trying to provide for us, and we're going, oh, no. So even dandelions, the dandelion leaves are edible, the flowers are edible. You can make wine from it, you can make tea from it, and there are medicinal benefits too. So before you start ripping things out, just stop for a second and really think, do I know what this plant is? Do I know what it's doing for my yard, if anything? And is it okay if I leave it? What's the worst that can happen if I leave it? Now, obviously, if it's something that's invasive, you're going to want to take action. But the diversity here is good. I use this quote from Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, because it's valid for weeds as well. And I won't do an Australian accent because I'm horrible at Australian accents. But he says it's a shame he doesn't know that we're trying to help him. He's trying to help this animal and it's biting him. And he's going, but I'm trying to help him. And this is kind of what weeds are saying to us, like, hey, I'm trying to help here. That dandelion that you're ripping out has a really long taproot. And what it's telling you is that there's a deficiency in your soil, or that your soil is compacted and needs some aeration. And it's doing that for you. It's breaking it up with its long taproot. It's giving you a potential something to eat. It's trying to give you an offering. So, something like comfrey too is a plant that we use in food forests. And comfrey is a chop and drop plant. So it really is a sacrificial plant, but it's also a pollinator plant. It's also a compost accelerator. So, in permaculture, we call that stacking functions. So if you're going to pick a plant, why not have it do more than one thing if you can? So for example, if I wanted, I'm trying to attract butterflies. So I'm going to put in a lilac bush. Maybe that's not the best example, but let's say a mock orange. I'm putting in a mock orange bush. And what am I getting from that? Well, I'm getting swallowtail butterflies. I'm getting bird habitat. I'm getting privacy from neighbors. I'm getting beautiful flowers. I'm getting a gorgeous smell. So those are the stacked functions. So that's really a high value plant in my garden because it does so much for me, not just one thing, not just, oh, it looks pretty. It is pretty, but it's got so much going for it. So back to identifying, knowing what's in there, is this providing a service? Is it edible? Is it medicinal? Is it invasive? This thing that looks like an asparagus is the beginning of the Japanese knotweed, which is actually a beautiful plant. It got planted for a reason. It was giving people privacy. It's got a lovely flower and a lovely smell, but it just takes over everything, as does the periwinkle that's also in that shot. Beautiful flower, but it can be problematic and take over and choke out native species. So try to prioritize local plants to your area. And I know we've got people from sort of, Cache Creek down to Summerland here. So really learn about what the plants are specific to your area, because they're going to be slightly different depending on the microclimate and the we're a little more arid here. Of course, Sigrie's down in Kelowna. So, and I'll give you some references at the end of this presentation that you can check out. Again, some things are going to die. That's okay. Try to select drought resistant plants and group plants together based on their needs. And always think of your pollinators. You know, we really need to invite those pollinators back into your system again. And even wildlife, as much as we think, you know, wildlife is bad and the deer ate my crops and whatnot, you know, back to return the surplus. The animals need to survive too. And, you know, the birds eating a few of our berries, well, we get the joy and the entertainment of watching the birds. And so there's a bit of a trade-off, right? No naked soils. I never ever want to see your soil looking like this. You should always have something covering your soil. Please, please, please use mulch. If you're going to do some work on the property and it's going to be, you know, a week or two before you can get the plants in for some reason, make sure cover it with a tarp, cover it with some organic straw, get some wood mulch, just something. Just don't leave it like this because it is going to blow away. The top layer is going to get picked up on the wind. It's going to go. You're going to lose all the moisture and all the benefit of that soil. So please don't leave your soil naked ever if you can help it. Just checking my time here. So building your soil. So this is something where you may not have been interested in this type of thing before. And I don't know how to build soil and how hard is it? And really sheet mulching is a great way if you want to, for instance, build a raised bed, or you want to just convert some of your lawn to a garden. You can use this method to build your soil. So it's a mix of organic materials. So you can see here, we've got our leaf layer, our straw or cocoa coir mulch layer on the top, or wood chips on the top. Underneath that is your compost. And then over time, you know, as you water it, that compost is going to get down deeper into the soil. This has got another thick layer of brown materials. It's got some wet cardboard. So the wet cardboard is your sort of muffling, get rid of the grass. We also don't want to break our backs, you know, when we're trying to build soil, we don't need to necessarily be turning the soil. In fact, that's not preferable. The more we turn the soil, the more oxygen gets in there and the more it sort of breaks down and you break up all of the mycelial networks underneath the soil. And we want to keep that intact, but give it nutrient from the top. So that is sheet mulching. If you've got some, you know, if you're doing this in the spring, for example, you can let your lawn grow quite long and then mow it before you do this. And then you can actually use that as part of your nitrogen rich layer. You can also obviously throw that in the compost. And then, you know, if you can get your hands on a soil kit, do a little bit of testing, find out what your pH is, find out what sort of nutrients might be missing in your soil, then that will give you the idea of what you need to add in terms of, you know, manure, kelp meal, blood meal, those other items down lower. You know, usually if you're planting a plant, throwing some bone meal in the hole for root development helps. But, you know, try to figure out what's going on with your soil first. In terms of plants, so I'm specific to the Shuswap tonight because we're with the Shuswap Climate Action Group. So these are Shuswap specific trees that you can choose if you've got a larger property. I'm going to prioritize here these deciduous trees because the leaves are so valuable. We want that leaf litter. That is a resource for us now. From this day forward, leaves are a resource. We try not to we don't get rid of them. They stay on your property if you have a choice. So, you know, birch, aspen, maple, alder, those are lovely, lovely trees that you can choose. Lots of shrubs. So the one I was talking about earlier, the mock orange is in there. That's the picture on the top right there. Beautiful flower. Saskatoon bush, you know, obviously you get berries out of that one, so they make a lovely pie. So a lot of these bushes are, you know, roses. Oregon grape, very, very hardy, although even those were showing some signs of stress out on the land this year. And try something new, you know, even if you've never tried it, do some experimentation. You know, you may not know what thimbleberry tastes like, or you may not have ever had you know, some elderberry juice. Do a little bit of research, really dig in there and find out what is going to work for you. And again, think about the mature size of the bush. Some beautiful flowers that you can add that are local to this area anyway. Showy aster, columbine is the red one there, and that's the native one is the red one. Lupin, lovely, comes in a number of different colors. Fireweed is also just great in nature right now because of the fires. It's a nice one. Yarrow we use quite a lot in permaculture. It's got multiple uses. And it's very, very easy to grow. As you know, you probably see it as a weed in your garden, but it's not. It has value. In terms of ground cover, I really like strawberries. I mean, hey, if you're going to cover the ground with something, why not be strawberries? The pussy toes there, really cute as well. Knick is a local indigenous plant that has healing properties to it. For instance, for things to do with like urinary tract infections, it can come in handy. I don't have time to get into all of the details of all the plants today. But things to keep in mind when you're siting things on your property. So looking at over the course of the year, where does the sun move, right? So in the summer, the sun is going to be directly above us. It's going to be out for a lot longer. In the winter, it's going to be more, along the horizon, much lower for less time in the day. So really consider the different times of year. Is this a heat loving, can totally handle everything tomato? Or, is this a hosta that really wants to be in the shade and likes it a little more moist? How big is this plant going to get? How, what works with it? So if you're going to get two plants to go together, trying to find a contrast. So they look nice together and they give the eye some appeal there. Are you allergic to anything? Are there any colors that you really love? But having said that, I think HGTV has done us a little bit of a disservice, just in the setting the expectations for people that you're gonna put them in and it's all gonna be beautiful immediately. It is gonna take time for things to grow in, but also you don't want all purple plants or all yellow plants. You do want a mix because different pollinators are attracted to different colors. If you want hummingbirds, you're gonna have to have some reds in there. So think about what you want to invite into your outdoor space. Okay, and how long do I have? I got 10 minutes. Okay. We're going to go through a lawn transformation that we did in Salmon Arm 2 years ago at the Lighthouse Food Forest. So this is the Salvation Army site, their front lawn, downtown Salmon Arm. And in 2021, they wanted to do something with it. They said, this is just not being used properly. There's nothing going on here. We are a food bank. We offer help to people when they're struggling. So why not put in an edible landscape? So they wanted it to be accessible, abundant. They wanted people to be able to have connections on this site and bring a little bit more joy and healing to a difficult time. So we did a soil test initially. It broke my shovel. The soil is very, very hard and compacted and clay. And so we knew we had some soil building to do. So without getting into all of the hairy details here, we used a method called hugelkultur, which is a German word meaning mound culture. And it's a radical soil building method. So we wanted to make sure that we could have vegetables and fruits growing on this site as quickly as possible. And so this is the best way to do it. So the hugelkultur, you dig a trench about 18 inches to 2 feet down. Of course, we had excavators for this. If you don't have access to excavators, this is a weekend project and bring some friends. So we dig the trench, we line it all with that cardboard to muffle all of the weeds or unwanted plants and grass, and make sure again that that's overlayered. We chop up a bunch of old punky wood. So if you've got some laying around on the property, or somebody that cut down a deciduous tree in the last couple of years and it's nice and old and dry, that's the best wood for the bottom layer. And then from there, you get a little bit smaller. You're going to get, smaller branches, and you're going to sort of build it up into a point at the top. And it's going to have layers of all sorts of organic materials. So in this case, we've got some old plant material, we've got food scraps, we've got manure, we had everything delivered ahead of time. So we had compost, we've got topsoil, we've got mulch layer. We also, for this site, added some biochar and some grass clippings. I don't have time to get into the wonders of biochar at the moment, but that's a really great carbon sequestration tool and really works well with compost when you're building soil. This site also had a beautiful tree on site that's giving us free carbon. So we're going to rake those up every year and try to keep them as close to there as possible and put them in the compost. And then, so here's the site. The following spring, we got some fruit trees in and we planted some bulbs. We actually had the Girl Guides come out and plant some bulbs for us. So that white crocus was the first flower growing on site there. And those mounds that you see with the straw, those are the hugelkultur beds. And on this site, because we're downtown and we're central in Salmon Arm, we wanted to make sure that the perimeter of the site is aesthetically pleasing and tidy. So we did steel raised beds around the outer edges. Just a warning about steel beds, they do get quite hot. So keep that in mind. You may want, having said that, we had kale in them, we had lettuce in them this year. They did really well. So as long as you really start with great soil, that's going to be key. So just going through time here, this is 2021. There is late that same year, and then this was earlier this year. So now we've got an abundant foodscape. We've got compost in the center of the space because we want to be expressing to people that soil is key. We want that to be at the center. We're always going to need compost. So in this case, we did a food archway, so a little food tunnel there. We had cucumbers growing through the tunnel. So it just brings a little bit of fun and whimsy to the site. And so as people are entering the property, they can just grab a little pickling cuke, or we had people come through here all the time and just grab whatever is fresh, and it's really heartwarming, and it's really brought some community feel back down to that corner. So, and it's going to get better and better. A food forest like this will just get better with time. And this is a hybrid food forest, I'll say. Usually in a food forest, we're not doing, steel raised beds. So this is a bit of a departure from that. But you'll see there we've got fruit trees and we've got fruit tree guilds. So under the fruit trees, we've got supportive plants like that comfrey there in the middle. So that's a chop and drop. We just chop that and spread it around the tree, and that's going to give fertilizer back to it. And again, we're trying to work smarter, not harder. So if we need this resource, comfrey, in this spot, well, then we just chop it and leave it there instead of putting it in a wheelbarrow and taking it, across the site. We've got a comfrey plant with every fruit tree plant there. And each one of the fruit tree guilds has, some yarrow, and it's got some red clover for nitrogen fixing. It's got some, flowers. We even threw some cabbage in there this year, just always trying new things. And there's what it looked like a few weeks ago. It's all been put to bed now. So all of the annuals have been taken out. But the perennials are still off and running, and we've mulched everything. So the soil is nice and tucked in for the winter and ready for the snow. In terms of mulch, there's lots of different types of mulch. I know there's been some debate lately because of the fires that Fire Smart folks don't want you to use wood mulch. There's pros and cons to everything. I do like a wood mulch because it is going to bring my soil up to a fungally dominated soil as opposed to bacterial, which is good for food growing. You may find that mushrooms start to pop up in your yard if you're using the wood mulch. Please don't eat any of those mushrooms unless you for sure know what they are. Very dangerous. And you can use a pea gravel or a smaller stone mulch as well, just keeping in mind that you want to have a nice thick planting, because that rock will get quite warm in the sun and it'll release that heat in the evening. So if you've got a heat loving plant, then rock mulch, is more suitable. But for food growing and for perennial, berries and whatnot, the wood mulch is quite nice. And it's a pick your aesthetic. So obviously for your pathways, you're going to use a finer mulch so it doesn't hurt your feet if you're walking barefoot on it, or you're not going to roll your ankle if you step on a big chunk of fur. So those are all considerations. And you can use 2 different mulches just to make 2 different areas look somewhat different to define your lines. You see that I use straw a lot. You know, there's definitely a perception out there that straw looks messy. There is a reason that we use it. I use strictly organic straw on my site. I don't want any sort of pesticides leaching in to the soil. But straw, you can pack it on nice and thick. It holds moisture. It's relatively affordable. Of course, the price, like everything, has gone up. But organic straw can be very difficult to find. So I do bring a load in every spring and fall for my clients, but I am out right now. So if anybody knows a source of organic straw bales, let me know. The other thing to consider is patience. Please know that it will take time. It's not going to be year 1. It's not even going to be year 2. It'll really be year 3 after you've done an installation where you should start to really feel like, okay, now this is happening. You know, the first year, the plants are going to be a little bit shocked, and they're probably going to be babies. So you have to take care of them a little more, make sure they're really well watered at all times, and it should get easier over time. So don't expect those immediate results. And also don't worry about everything being so perfectly tidy. You know, nature is not tidy. What do we love about going for hikes in the forest? It's just everything growing on top of everything. And that's what makes it beautiful. So it's really challenging what we think is beautiful. That, you know, that tidiness, as I said, at the Salvation Army there, we manage that with the steel raised beds on the exterior perimeter. And again, just a reminder, some plants will die, and that's okay. Oops. My last plug for compost, please compost. I do courses on composting as well. So I'm so glad that we have municipal service. It's just so good. I mean, the fact that we sent food waste to the landfill for 100 years is just a shame. And we've got to, you know, make up for lost time now. Composting reduces waste. It builds soil. It saves water. It reduces greenhouse gases, because when you mix organic and non-organic at the landfill, it creates methane. And so when we keep that out, we're actually always giving back to the earth. So, and I would also just like to say, stop calling it yard work. You know, your brain thinks that's a bad thing and it doesn't want to do it. So start calling it earth care. And then you go outside and you're like, ooh, I've got this really important, you know, meaningful task to do. And it's just my ongoing responsibility and task to, you know, sometimes even do less than you think that you'll need to. You know, sometimes it's really about noticing things and just waiting a few days, because maybe you've got aphids on your tomatoes. But you know what? Maybe if you wait a couple days, ladybugs will come and eat them. And then you didn't have to do anything. So if you've created that multi-layered, you know, food forest or system, then nature will come in. It's just that we need to be patient. Few just tips for places that you can go if you want to dig in a little bit deeper here. These are some books you can look at. Secwepemc People. This is a really great, very thorough book written by Marianne and Ronald. I'm going to pronounce their name wrong, Ignace. But yeah, really, like, just so much information in this book. It is quite a thick book, as is the Edible Forest Gardens. Edible Forest Gardens is more like you know, a textbook. So if you're nerdy like me, you'll like it. The Plants of the Inland Northwest, also reference book. I really like reference books. So you know, you're obviously not going to have that. You might have an app on your phone that's going to be doing plant identification, but these books are really great too. For more the permaculture thing, integrated forest gardening. So looking at those polyculture systems. One of the fathers of permaculture, David Holmgren, his book, Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability. Gaia Garden is a really great for home scale if you're doing this. I really was inspired by this documentary, Garbage Warrior. It's why I got into permaculture. This film is probably 10 or 15 years old now, But this was about radically sustainable housing, but within those houses, they were growing food all year round. And in order to grow food in a house all year round, you have to know how to grow food. And so that's what inspired the connection to permaculture. The original designer's manual there. Kiss the Ground, beautiful film. There's a lot, it's really sort of a hot topic now. So regenerative agriculture and, you know, save the soil and all of these movements. It's like famous people all of a sudden get that we need to do things and we need to take action. And so much of it comes back to the soil. So may not be what everybody wants to hear, but I really invite you to get intimate with your soils in 2024. So that's my presentation. Here's how to reach me if you have any questions after tonight. It's been really great to be able to speak with all of you. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge the stress and the trauma of 2023 with the fires this year. And I really want to thank everybody who came forward to help evacuees and, you know, help feed people. Sometimes it's disaster that brings us together, and it's been a tough few years. So I just really appreciate everybody who came out tonight and wants to hear about this really, really important topic.
Thanks very much, Keli. That was great. We're kind of late in the evening here, and I want to leave some time for questions. I think we're going to have Sigrie do her presentation in February, but Sigrie, if you could maybe just give us just a snapshot of what your presentation will be.
Of course, Julia. I will be talking about the 7 principles of Xeriscape, something I'm really passionate about. You know, and Keli's talked a lot about this too, about this desire to control our aesthetic and our desire to control nature. And we have to let that go. We have to stop Pinteresting things and all that, and just work with nature. Xeriscape really is gardening with nature, and our nature here is the semi-arid Okanagan Valley. We have so many people that look out at either the kitchen or living room window at one or maybe multiple lakes. So there's this misconception that we have a lot of water here, and we do not. Kelowna is the fastest growing metropolitan area in Canada. So we're really on a trajectory of we have, as the climate warms, and we all know it is. I think I just saw something from the UN that this September is 1.8 degrees warmer than pre-1950s. So there's no dispute there. All of us obviously don't dispute it. But so what we have happening in Kelowna and throughout the Okanagan is we have hotter summers, we have less water available to us, and we have more and more people coming to live and enjoy our beautiful Okanagan. Unfortunately, at the rate that we are consuming water, we're on a trajectory for disaster. The OBWB has done a ton of study on this, and they have, and if you go to their site, they have, it kind of hit home for me. They have these water bottles, and in Canada, in the Okanagan, we're at 675 or something liters per person per day. The rest of Canada is like 323 and down and down and down. And if you look at Israel, who's going through a terrible time right now, they are just over 100 liters a day, because they realized when they were established that they would have a problem because they were growing, and they have a similar agricultural component that we do. So that's what I'll be talking about. It doesn't have to be all cactuses and yuccas. There are tons of xeriscape plants that are look soft and touchable and approachable. I invite you all, if you haven't already, to go to our plant database on the Okanagan Xeriscape website. So you can just Google OXA on your, what is it, search engine thing. And yeah, look at our plant database and think about what you'd like to see in your own spaces moving forward.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Sigrie. That gives us a real good thumbnail of what to expect in February. We do have some time for questions. And so I'm just going to share some questions that we saw in the chat. One is, my neighbors are angry and frustrated, feeling that my compost attracts roof rats, a flourishing problem in our community. Do you have advice or rebuttal? I guess this is to Keli or Sigrie? Keli.
Sigrie probably has the answer.
Well, it's funny. Years ago, one of the pest control guys came and spoke at one of our master gardener spring meetings, and he said the rat situation I was unaware of, but the rat situation in Kelowna is out of control, and you don't even want to know what he told us. But yeah, it's one of those kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. A lot like chicken wire, things like that. I think Keli would probably agree with me. Those they're pretty pesky, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be composting. We just have to find ways to get around the vermin issue. And I think a lot of people, and I don't want to really generalize here, I probably shouldn't say that. But if people are against compost, then they're going to look for a reason why you shouldn't have a compost. And the rat thing is pretty easy to.
Yeah, there were some suggestions shared in the chat about using, I think it was catnip, or sorry, mint, and using pepper sauce.
Yep.
Capsicum, hot peppers, just to make your compost less attractive, I guess, to
That's right.
rodents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there might be some natural things out there that we can do. If we find anything, we'll add it to the resource page on our website. And I just want to also reiterate that all of the stuff that Keli has presented, the books, the videos, the lists of plants and other things, we can make that available. And it will also be all on the recording. So you can go back to the recording and just review those pieces that you want to get information on. So the next question then, either of you could probably answer this, was what zone is the Shuswap?
Our zones are changing all the time. Now here in Kelowna, I'm going to say broadly 5. I have actually clients near the lake. They have successfully overwintered in microclimate zone 7 plants here in Kelowna. I think you guys up there probably, I would say, solid zone 5. Here we're creeping into zone 6. We're getting warmer all the time. So, I mean, soon we're probably going to be able to leave our dahlia tubers in the ground over winter and stuff like that, like they do in Vancouver in 7 and 8 zones. Who knows what's going to happen, right? So we have to be prepared for the inevitable change and be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, okay.
I see Clea there also made a good point about going back to the previous question about composting, is it needs to be active. You need to be turning it, getting some oxygen in there. Again, making sure that you've got lots of carbon material going in. Most people make the mistake of just putting food waste in and then leaving it to rot. And that's you need to be a little bit more active. Sometimes you even need to add water. It'll dry out quite a bit. So get in there, stir it around. You should be able to take a handful of it, squeeze it, and get 1 drop of water out.
Okay. Another question that Clea had was, given the local climate issues, are wildfire mitigation and drought, she was wondering how you've been able to rethink, or have you been able to rethink using wood chip mulches close to the house, as it is not fire smart? So anybody want to?
I'll let Sigrie take that one.
I see this so often. In fact, since we just recently had the, end of late August, wildfire that decimated so much of especially West Kelowna, and up that area, I have had clients say, oh, we have to take up all of our wood mulch. Well, the reality is if fire is coming up the hillside, it's going to catch, if you have vinyl siding, it's going to catch your vinyl siding. It's going to catch your roof. Yes, we have to be fire smart, but we also have to be sensible. Arborist wood chips are the very best mulch you can use for your garden. So if I've got clients that are in a strata in the middle of downtown Kelowna. If their wood mulch is burning, there's a lot more going on there. So obviously, I mean, I've been shell shocked. I've been displaced by wildfire 4 times since I came to the Okanagan. And there is that, there's that panic and that, and then panic ends up being irrational decisions and stuff like that. So yes, we have to be conscious of where we use our wood chips, but we also have to be aware of all the other mitigating factors.
Okay, we've got another question here then. Anne wanted to know more about the water barrel rainwater collection systems.
Okay. Well, the options right now are either, you go to your local, Canadian Tire or nursery, or not a lot of nurseries have them, but yeah, for the most part, they're too small. I will say that. You get a barrel for your home. It's probably going to be 250 liters, 300 liters, which makes you feel really good initially. But then you realize just how much water you're going to need and how much water you can collect. So for example, on the island in Nanaimo, one of the smaller islands there, I think it might be Galliano, they're required to collect rainwater, 4,000 liters minimum. So the options are changing. So I will say that, for instance, I've got a 1,000-liter IBC tote, which is great, but it's bulky and it's cubed, it's an odd shape. There's a new product that's coming out next year that's going to start being manufactured in Canada, which is a flat rain barrel. And it's 1,000 or 2,000 or 4,000 liters, and you can link them up together. And they're more like almost like a fence panel. So they're quite narrow, and they've figured out how to manufacture it so that they can actually have it stacked right up next to the house, which doesn't take up a lot of room, or as I said, as a fence panel, and then you can actually put hanging baskets attached to them. So really cool product. That one's called Thin Tanks. They have been coming out of Australia, but they are going to start manufacturing in Canada next year. So that's great news. But in the meantime, IBC totes they work well as long as they're food grade. So make sure there was never anything non-edible in there. And they can be bulky and hard to find. So depending if you want to buy a new one, they can be $500. If you want to get a used one, sometimes you can get $200 or $300, but they're going to be harder to find and verify. But I would say go bigger than you think you need. It's a good investment, especially with the way things are changing.
Okay, yeah, it's amazing how much water you can collect in your house also. When you're just running the water to get warm water. That's what we did during the level 4 water restrictions here in Salmon Arm, and I was able to keep my food garden going. So it was amazing how much water you can actually collect that otherwise would be wasted. It was a real wake-up call, actually. Okay, we've got another question here. Margaret put down some yarrow seeds on bare soil about a week ago with hopes that it would sprout before winter sets in. However, no signs of sprouts yet. I'm wondering if I should cover the soil with hay as suggested by Keli.
Sigrie, planting seeds of yarrow in the fall?
Well, I mean, obviously they have to be irrigated. We have had some irrigation. My thing with yarrow is I can't stop it. Like we have it in our demonstration, lawn alternative demonstration garden, and it likes to go everywhere. So, you know, if you just planted it how long ago?
She said a week ago.
Yeah, so it would be a bit early to see anything coming up. You might have a problem, and you know, like Kelly said earlier, live and learn. I encourage people to plant as a turf lawn alternative, trifolium repens, which is Dutch white clover. I did it at a client's house, and I was like, why isn't anything coming up? Well, because the quail were in there. So you may have to protect it from marauding birds, because I mean, they'll be super happy that you're feeding them, right?
Okay, and actually a similar question about overplanting with clover seed. It was Bernice trying to convert an overgrown field to clover. Any advice on that?
Well, clover is short-lived, so you need to keep doing it. And as I said before, watch out for the birds, because they can get in there in a millisecond, pretty much, you know, destroy any of your try any of your attempts, but keep at it. And what you'll see, what I typically see with clients that do that is it's slow to start. So again, and Kelly talked about this too, we have this unbelievable desire to go from like 1 to 100. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature takes its time, and it's something, and I'm an extremely impatient person. And I feel like, even though I've been in this business for such a long time, I still want things to happen overnight. Nature teaches us that we have to be patient, and you have to be patient with everything you plant. I so often have clients and they say, I want it to look full in the beginning. Well, if you do a new planting and it looks full in the beginning, you're setting yourself up for disaster later. You know, fill in with annuals, or, you know, put big pots places and put either, you know, food like lettuces or annuals in them, but it doesn't happen overnight. And if you think it's going to, then maybe gardening is not, you know, something for you, or maybe it is something for you because it'll teach you patience.
I was just going to also add, before we go to the next question here, that I have started to go around to the local nurseries to see if they will bring in more native plants and highlight where they have drought tolerant plants, whether they're native or more ornamental, that people can use in their gardens. So obviously the key is to do your homework, but I think that some of the local nurseries here in Salmon Arm might be willing to bring some of those plants in and put them in an area where they're easily found by clients. There was some real energy started when I had a couple of discussions locally here. So we're going to continue those efforts as well. So on to the next question. We've got about 10 minutes left. So Tracy, this is for Sigrie. Clay soil will cost a lot of money to amend, or she assumes it will. It was a question. We have clay soil here too. Believe me, it is crazy. Do your xeriscape plants need good soil?
Okay, so a couple of questions there. Clay soil, will it take a lot of money to amend it? What you want to do is just constantly top dress and it was so funny because when I did the Master Gardener course, we kind of joked, if you don't know the answer, say add organic matter, because you can't go wrong, right? So, and that doesn't mean till in, as we are learning more and more about soil structure And tilling in absolutely destroys soil structure. Even though I tell people that all the time, I still have clients and they drive along in their, you know, little tiller machine, and I'm just like, oh. So don't till it into the soil, just top dress. And clay soil, even though it gets a bad rap, I mean, at my place, I need a pickaxe to dig a hole. So that tells you what I'm dealing with there, like glacial till. It's crazy. But clay soil also, there's a couple of good things about it. It holds nutrients and it holds water. So it's not the worst thing you can have. And most xeriscape plants prefer a lean soil. Look at where they exist naturally in, you know, in screes, on bluffs. They don't need a lot of pampering. In fact, if you fertilize some of your xeriscape plants, you might end up with problems. You know, you sometimes see your sedums, they flop out like this, like say the Autumn Joy or something like that, the upright sedums. That's usually because they're getting too much water, too much fertilization, or they're in too much shade. So just be aware of that. A lot of those plants, just think about, mimic nature, because we're never going to be better at this than nature. So mimic where they are. They're normally in poor soil. So just consider that with your xeriscape plants.
Okay, thanks. So we have another question from Brian. I just used some treated lumber to build a raised bed. Do I need to worry about the chemical leaching into my garlic that I am about to plant?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. I don't plant edibles in treated lumber beds personally. Cedar would be better. Of course, it's much more expensive, and that's why people choose the treated lumber. But if you don't have any other choice, you can tuck some cardboard into the sides there, so at least it's not leaching a little bit if you've already built it. That might be tough, but I see somebody else said, I read you should cover it with plastic. I just want to open the floor to Sigrie to talk about landscape fabric for a second.
You want me to go out with a bang, right? Rant, rant, rant. It's funny. I think I've been writing a column for Black Press and for Castanet now for a couple of years. And I think the biggest response I got to any of my columns was on the landscape fabric, because I said it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We, you know, and we as people, why are we, you know, we know it doesn't work. We put it down, and I see this so often, especially in new builds. You know, they've been bulldozing all over, compressing the soil all over the site. They come, they lay turf in the designated turf areas, and then they lay large or medium mixed rocks on top of landscape fabric with little planting holes for, you know, a lone maple or something like that. Landscape fabric does not work. It doesn't work. We have to stop using it. What does work is a deep enough mulch. And I so often have clients say, oh, I mulched, but I have weeds. And I go, and it's like whisper thin with the mulch. I'm like, how do you think that's going to do anything? 4 inches. If any of you are familiar with Linda Chalker Scott, she writes books. She's adjunct professor out of University of Oregon. She talks about a lot about arborist mulch, and yeah, 4 inches is 4 inches, and that's for your vegetable gardens. When you get, I mean, basically more is the better, but you have to think about when you're mulching. Do not, and I call this the volcano mulching, where, and I so often see the city of Kelowna do it. They, you know, they've got this mulch against the trunk of a tree. You don't want your mulch to be like that. You want your mulch to be like this. Because if your mulch is like this, all it's doing is inviting disease on that trunk. So keep it well away, and yeah, the more the merrier, basically, with your mulch. I know it's not shiny, but it's just so important.
Yes, I know. I've heard Kelly letting us know here we're doing the same thing in our backyard, and mulching actually preserves the moisture in the soil and has a lot of other really good things about it. And it looks kind of okay. I mean, I think it does. Anyway, okay, so we're going to go back to another question from Clea. We've got a few more minutes. She said, she asked, are you adapting your system, your water collection system, to use gray water safely or other drought-driven and water-restricted adaptations?
Great question. I would love to see municipalities get more into gray water. Yes, absolutely. It is kind of crazy that we flush clean water down a toilet. It doesn't, it's, yeah. We should be using composting toilets. We should be using gray water systems. There's laundry to landscape systems where you can collect, as long as you're using a gentle soap, you know, that's non-toxic. Your laundry, your sink, you know, those types of things should be able to go out to the land, you know, into a mulch basin around a tree or something like that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. There's not too many people doing it. I mean, I know of one company in Kelowna that does it or has done it. I would love to be able to offer it myself. I think there's still more information needed. You know, there's definitely some things that would be great that need a bit more research or just need a little bit more proof for regional districts and municipalities so they can go, okay, this is safe. You know, you've always got somebody that's going to throw some, you know, paint down the down the tub or something. But if there was at least a valve where you could swap it, you know, one goes to the sewer, one goes to the yard. I think that's definitely something that municipalities could indicate in their climate action plans. You know, as they start to redo their official community plans and zoning and whatnot, is really seriously look at how we're using those water resources. So
that should definitely be for new builds. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And also the whole toilet flushing thing. I mean, I remember going down to California in the early 90s, and they, even then, if it's yellow, it's mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. Again, it's this compulsion to clean and control, and that we really, as a species, we've got to get away from.
You know, Australia is really a little bit ahead of us on this, and they are now required to have at least 1,000 liters of rainwater collection. And that is the first option for the toilets. They fill initially from the rainwater tanks, and then once those are empty, then it switches over to the other system.
Yeah. My mom's Australian, and she just can't even get over how backwards we are here.
Yeah.
And I think it's because for such a long time, we felt that Canada, you know, we could waste it. We had it to waste, right? Again, it's like Israel, it's like Australia. They've known for a lot longer than we have that they had a problem. But we have a problem now. We're selling too much of our water to Nestle or whoever. And I was down on the coast in the beginning of June, and honestly, it looked like the beginning of September down there. It was so dry even then. It's not the wet coast that I went to university on in years and years ago. It's drying out, and we have to respond and again start making better decisions, and making better decisions now, not making better decisions when we're at the last hour, last second.
Yeah, I really hear you on this, and you know, this is the importance of a really comprehensive climate action plan for communities, because it can incorporate a lot of these new ideas. You may not be able to institute them right away, but you can have them instituted in the future, and we've got to start now for sure. Anyways, we're at 8:30, and as we end the session for this evening, I'd just like to thank all of you for participating. You have absolutely blown us away with your interest in this event, and it's awesome and demonstrates the desire of so many of us to address the climate crisis in a green and solutions-based way. I want to thank our presenters and our team here at Shuswap Climate Action will be doing a debrief to ensure that the next session is the best it can be. Once again, thanks to our terrific guest speakers and to the City of Salmon Arm for their generous support to make this happen. The follow-up webinar will be on Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. Same time, 7 p.m. So please mark your calendars and keep an eye on our website and social media pages for the registration link as that date approaches. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening. Be kind and stay safe. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. And come back in February to listen to me
Yes.
ramble on.
Sorry, Sigrie.
Please do.